Okay, so the first speaker, I know I saw the agenda with us as doing the roundtables, but if I could, and I apologize, everyone, this is my first time doing this. So, if Mike, if you could help me out.
So the first speaker is Katrina. Katrina, are you here? I see Katrina. You're muted, Katrina.
Okay, I'm here. I can go ahead.
Okay, Katrina, try to keep it about 10 minutes so we can stay on schedule. We'd appreciate it.
Super, of course. Yeah.
And then if everyone's okay with this, we'll just have a couple minutes of Q&A immediately following each of the presentations as opposed to at the very end.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Katerina, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me at this. It's a wonderful day. So I will first show our product really quickly, because you can basically see it. This is a fake arm, whereas here you have infusion. All 90% of people admitted to hospital will receive some kind of infusion. And what happens is that what we found out is when we were looking to start our entrepreneurship journey is that if there are pulls to the tubes very often, then what happens is that it gets tense, it hurts the vessel, and eventually it can either ripped out or hurts the patient. There are loads of, all of these accidents cost 72 billion euros in unnecessary healthcare consumption. So instead of having a force getting pulled up, hurting the vessel, we have developed a small connector that we call Relink, and it goes very quickly. When people are looking, it seems longer. It's very easy. So it's then connected like that. So instead, when there is a pull to the tube, the connector splits into two parts. Double balls keep blood and medicine from spilling. You can easily clean this and reconnect it again to rapidly restate therapy. So now you've seen that. Now I will share my presentation, but otherwise it's goes forth and back. So to be able to develop Relink, we have gotten lots and lots of help from the ecosystem around in Sweden, where I come from, as well as the European Innovation Council and EIT Health and others. I will come to these. So the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we are in, we started our journey with the Children Clinical Innovation Fellowship at the Children's Oncology Clinic to identify their unmet needs. We followed a process called Stanford Biodesign process, and this was sponsored by, at the time, it has also run under EIT Health, but at the time it was our Karolinska and KTH, together with some foundations, that sponsored it. But we got training in the entire system, and from identifying the need to inventing and to implementation, do the implementation. So we quickly go through these steps, as well as mentioning some of the people who actually helped us. So the first innovation process is that you first start with observing how things are done, and from that we found a certain need that we were working on, and then we conceptualized a technology to the specific need that we were solving. So as you saw in the demonstration before, there was a need for safer and more efficient IV therapy, and the way we then manage with the prototype and screening to it, we have a disruptive technology to real need. And when you have that, it's obviously easier to find money and help from other places, because everybody sees the patients get hurt, there is shortage of nurses, and they have to spend a lot of extra time doing all of those things. So this is sort of the process that we worked on, and you saw the need for safer infusion tubes. When you think that there are 1.5 billion catheters used annually and 16 billion tubes, 40% failure rate, adding up to the 72 billion euros in unnecessary healthcare consumption. This way you have, a very good base for having an entrepreneurial journey, because you have a real need and you have product solving it. So what we were doing then was that we were generating several concepts and screening these and developing prototypes, and it's sort of a long journey when it comes to medtech. But also here we got loads and loads of help from the ecosystem developing link. It's both the different research partners that we have had, such as KTH, and loads of hospitals that want the solution that has helped us. And all of these helping things is truly valuable. KTH Innovation is also a system in Sweden. Well, it's part of the KTH University Innovation Centers that have helped. Also, Karolinska Institute have offered to help. And then there are different innovation centers around Europe that help companies, basically. Euroscientia being one of them. They're based in France. There is a similar one in Germany, Medical Valley. And then there are all of these hospitals that are committed to having a product getting out there. And when it comes to medtech development, it's very important to have clinical data, because the clinical data is what you use for medtech marketing. And also, it's if you want to survive the entrepreneurial journey, you obviously need money and funding, and you need a product and a passionate team and all of these things. So once you've managed all of those things, well, it's a very rewarding journey, and it's very good to have the ecosystem around you. It's very good to get the help, and the European Innovation Council has helped us with funding. They have helped us with getting out to different exhibitions, and I think in a way it has enabled the journey to keep on going. And this is like a base, because I mean our journey has just begun. So when it comes to the implementation that we are busy now doing the commercialization phases, that those three: identify, event, implement, we use them as a repetitive standard and structure in our company. Then we've added here strategy, development, business planning. Then we have within medtech regulatory, the structure is scripted. And then we always try to reduce the risks constantly and try to mitigate them before they even occur. And then we use the clinical trials and testing for the medtech marketing, and then setting up a structure. But when it comes to ecosystem and how you do these things, you need to have products aligned and collaborate with people who are best of their kind. At least that's our way to do it. So the ecosystem has enabled us for our entrepreneurial journey, as well as setting the platform where we are now. The Relink is a platform technology that it's a breakaway connector, but it has a lot of a wide set of application. So we have developed, I mean, it's a really small connector, as you saw, but depending on how you put the application, you can use it in so many different applications within healthcare, and there are billions and billions of tubes to be saved every year. And this is basically the same structure that you saw from the beginning, but where we want to innovate and prove, and then collaborate with more partners further still. So here you still have identify, invent, and implement, but eventually we want to partner up with people and produce and sell, so we can go back and do another innovation, yet another one, because this is really where our passion lies, and this is where we think we're really good as a team. So the way we have structured is that we target high potential and high margin R&D business with this need-based approach, and then we try to lower the entire risk business model with grant application, but as well as also patent things that are relevant. And then we have professional execution. We have hired lots of PhDs or people from top-tier consultancy companies with a very big variety from different application sets, as well as preferably people from experience from other countries. So we found that working tremendously well. Thank you for having us.
Okay, Katarina, thank you so much. That was very interesting and a very good presentation. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. I mean, obviously it's sustainable, but It seems like patient comfort is an absolute benefit, correct?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so patient comfort is a benefit. And then in terms of cost savings to the enterprises.
Yes, definitely. It's a huge cost benefit for the hospitals. But also if we were to sell through multinational corporation, they would then be able to sell more of their other products instead of bundles. So you could have, if you use it in automotive or something, you would have be able to do a delta price increase, a little bit more market share, or even widen your business area specifically. But back to I think I was muted when we spoke about the patients. The benefits are more than just the patients, because I mean the patients you will save them from the pain, the anxiety, all of these things. But there is also huge advantages with, depending on what you have in the IV bag. If it's toxic, if it's chemo or something, it's really, really bad if you have it out, if you spill it, because it's toxic. And also if you have expensive medication, you use it, it's really bad. And in many countries, US being one of them, you would take whatever is in the bag and actually throw it away, because there is contamination in several countries. You don't have the medicine for the entire year. When do you get cancer in some countries? Is the medicine or is there no medicine? So the thing of losing things is horrible on so many levels. And then you have the time saving for the nurses. It takes approximately 30 minutes to reinstate a therapy today, and it happens in so many applications. The most common invasive procedure, and there is a failure rate of 40%. So this is millions and millions of nursing hours wasted. It's unnecessary healthcare consumption, and we have a solution.
Thank you, Katarina. So yes, I mean, I did learn about that through your presentation, minimizing contamination, minimizing waste. So I think we're going to move on. And again, thank you. So the next presenter is Audesh Chatal. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Audesh, are you with us?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello, welcome. There you are. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Sure. So I have 20 minutes, and I'll actually present two different topics. And one of them essentially is about venture studios. I'll share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. So hello, everyone. My name is Avdesh. I'm based in Doha, Qatar, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I run a couple of technology companies here in Qatar, Oman, UAE, Saudi Arabia, about 200 people in the region. I've been building technology products. I have been also running a venture studio and venture investment arm for multiple years. And we do a lot of work in the IoT and the AI space. So we have a leading IoT platform, probably region. We also have another product line in the AI space. We have a fairly large customer base here and in the region. We also manage multiple government startup incubators in the Middle East. We manage their programs. We also run enterprise programs for startups, and enterprises. So, what I'm going to talk about today is the impact of venture studios and the difference venture studios bring to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So for us, we run a private venture studio and incubation arm. It operates between the Middle East and in India. And typically, our business model is we work from scouting to launch. We also run an investment platform. So we typically, the way we operate is we go for scouting, we look for startups regionally, and then we matchmake them with ideas. So it's not a traditional startup building approach. We essentially, build startups around ideas where we see potential. And then we bring these startups and teams into a 6 to 12 month cohort program and grow those ideas internally. So our programs are more intensive. So we essentially build the tech in-house. We also invest at the first check about $250,000, and we help the startups go to market across the region. We also have a parallel venture fund. We also work with multiple angels and partners who invest in the startups who work out of our studio. And so we have different pillars at the studio. So the venture studio is the core. We run fundraising programs. We have corporate services. We also run go-to-market, mentoring, product development. And as I said earlier, we have presence across the region. So we've built the ecosystem very strongly. We have partnerships with multiple venture capital firms. We have angels. We have corporate partnerships. We also have a large pool of mentors and advisors who work with us, along with government agencies who collaborate and work with us here and in the region. So you see, what are the typical problems which we are trying to address? The problems which we have seen specifically in the Middle East is that, because of the demographics, because some of these countries are very small populations, and the fact that you do not see a lot of strong deal flow coming out of the region, it is good to invent a lot of ideas and matchmake them in teams rather than scout for ideas. And it seems, the traditional venture studio model has been very effective in being able to build high impact technology areas in-house rather than sourcing them, in the market. So for us, that has been, the key strength. We've been able to build some really original ideas within the incubator around IoT, AI, deep tech, blockchain. And we've been able to identify some really stellar teams and matchmake them with ideas, come together and build some really good stuff. And our approach, as I said, is very different from a traditional incubator accelerator. We essentially start with research. So we look at what ideas are trending, what are the top typical ideas which have value and can create an impact in the local ecosystem. And then we go about team scouting. We identify and build balanced teams across, say, sales and marketing, technology, and operations. Then once the teams come together, we set up and invest in them. We do the first check, we give them the right infrastructure. And in any of the teams which require a lot of technology development, we develop the product in-house. So we have teams, in multiple countries. We have in-house technology talent, which essentially build the first MVP and the first cut of the product for the startup. So for a startup, it becomes much more easier in terms of being able to build a high-end technology product, as well as being able to go to market faster, as well as get to further investment faster. Okay, so we work across the multiple stages of startup building, from ideation, discovery, incubation, launch to the scale stage. And we have been running multiple fundraising programs. So we have a network of investors available. We have pitched from CVC partnerships also. We've also got multiple training, mentoring programs embedded in the studio, as well as available externally. And we have some corporate services. Okay. So we've got partnerships with multiple venture funds, startup incubators, government agencies, as well as big funds all over the region, which come and work at the studio and collaborate with us. And this is our team. We've got a stellar team with a lot of experience in the venture building stage. So, for people who are not aware, I've just put a few slides together, the studio model and how it creates an impact and what's the value of venture studio, typically in today's economics and today's, low funding, ecosystem. So a studio is typically a structure which is very powerful in repeatedly building products into companies. It also provides all the necessary infrastructure which a startup typically needs to be able to build and grow faster. It also has a focus on building multiple products simultaneously using similar frameworks. So you might see, let's say, a healthcare AI startup which is building on top of an AI framework. And the similar AI framework could be used for a supply logistics startup with some tweaks in changing the AI model or in being able to change the underlying technology can be reused at the studio, and a lot of the shared team value can be provided across multiple startups. We also have full-time working staff on design, development, and marketing, which are shared across multiple startups. And typically, an early stage startup cannot afford a lot of these expensive skills, hire them directly. A shared model can still take advantage of high-end skills so that, they can bring those skills in their startup. We are also vested in the things we do. So typically, we are very goal-based, and we help our startups curate teams around specific products and engineering. And we also bring go-to-market are extensive. And if you see globally, there are a lot of top venture studios, in different domains, different technology areas. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Rocket and Project A and Idea Labs. And typically, you'll see a lot of different spin-offs in the studio model, which are currently going on. And you'll see a lot of top global products come out of studios. So you have Instagram, which came out of Kevin Systrom, founded a company. We have Twitter, Flickr, Trello, Slack. So some of these big global companies have come out of studios and then establishes the value which studios bring and, potentially can leverage. So, as I said, a studio's model is very valuable because, it gives you a fast track from the complete life cycle, from idea, validation, creation, and spin out. The studio has been very, effective. And, our product development philosophy is essentially around building simple and appealing solutions that add value by focusing on the important. We build very clean and simple solutions to existing problems. That's our fundamental philosophy. And most of the times we are just building the first cut of the product for the startups. So eventually we focus on the core functionality and we focus on the important and effective and simplify and provide value. We also ensure that these products are sleek, appealing, so that the CX is good, and then the adoption for these products are fairly stronger. And we believe in simple, tested, effective products, which is enhance our life. So, and I've put a brief comparison on the difference between a typical venture studio, accelerator, incubator, and a venture capital firm. So if you see, the life cycle of a venture studio extends across identifying the right business ideas, team building, finding the right capital, investing the capital, ourselves, as well as scouting for capital from the market. We also scout for co-founders. So, unlike a team which is pre-built and going into an incubator and pitching their ideas, we are actually working ground up in team building, idea matchmaking, in all different areas of startup building ourselves. We also provide co-working startup support services. So, for the startup, they have the entire ecosystem and support model to get started and to launch their products. And as well as we have the scale-up support and understanding on how to scale startups. So if you see, we are very comprehensive, and the startup venture studio model is a much more intensive and comprehensive business model, unlike a typical incubator and accelerator. A venture capital firm is just more about money. So this is in brief, and I just wanted to bring that idea about what we do and how studios can be helpful and how they can be impactful in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Middle East and beyond.
Thank you, Adesh. I hope I'm pronouncing your first name correctly. That was very interesting. And I like how you broke down, especially at the end, the different types of approaches to building products, services. So I just have one question. So you talked about startup incubators, and then you talked about startup studios. The latter phrase is new to me, and I'm wondering if the Startup Studio is a subset of Startup Incubator. And I understand how you're going into the different demographics and you're recognizing the different needs that they have. So I'm wondering if that is true, if it's a subset of that, or if it's just another phrase for startup incubators.
Yeah, so studios and incubators are very different in the business model, in how they invest or the kind of equity they take in startups.
Okay.
You know, venture studio is like a rented kitchen. So a startup can actually go, they can, you know, rent and get all the necessary support required to build, you know, the startup. So if I'm a solo founder, I can actually go into a studio and then take help to find a co-founder. I can also choose different ideas. So if I don't have an original idea myself, but I have, say, skills in AI, or if I have skills in automotive technology or in biotech, I can look at trending ideas where the startup studio can support me in identifying the right ideas and probably taking one of those good ideas up. I can also pitch, you know, to the studio to invest. If I'm in the studio, I get some money by default. Plus, I get the help to reach out to more investors. The studio helps me build the product ground up, right? And then, you know, I can then stay and work at the studio for about a year with my team and then go to the next level. So a studio model is more intensive, and in an incubator, typically, you know, I find my own team. I bring the idea, so essentially it's an original idea which the team brings in. Then I go out and then I pitch to multiple incubator programs. If I get selected, the incubator takes a small equity and then gives you a support program where they coach you, train you, or then reach out to potential investors. So here on an incubator, you're more on your own. In a studio, it's a more intensive.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so Adesh, I think you have the floor again. The next presentation is you as well.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to talk about, you know, the space of Internet of Things. We have a subsidiary company called HyperThings, and HyperThings largely is known in the Middle East region for its enterprise IoT platform. We have a large customer base, including oil and gas, telcos, government, as well as unions and power companies who use our IoT platform. And for people who are not aware of what is an IoT platform or what is Internet of Things, largely, the Internet of Things is an ecosystem built of smart devices or sensors. These could be devices which you use in your home, like smart bulb or you know, a smart light, or you know, in the city, like smart parking sensors, smart waste bin sensors, smart asset trackers, or you know, smart healthcare devices. So it's a global ecosystem of smart devices. And IoT platforms and IoT technology is essentially built to control, manage, and deploy some of these interesting smart solutions. And so for us, we have been in the IoT business for almost 6+ years. So we built this industry leading IoT platform, which is being used by large global customers. So we have multiple global partnerships in different regions. We have a big customer base, multiple oil and gas companies, telcos. We have government and ministries who use our IoT platform. We have multiple customers, you know, in the region. So I would essentially just go to the core piece of what is a platform and how it, you know, adds value. So if you see, if I have to deploy, say, a smart parking solution or a smart asset tracking solution at an enterprise scale, and when I say enterprise scale, these are millions of devices which are deployed in different countries across the world. And and for a large enterprise to be able to track, let's say, if there is a shipping organization and they are shipping multiple assets, containers across the world, so they want to track so many assets continuously. So what kind of technology or software can be built or used to be able to track these smart devices and and provide these solutions to end customers? So any typical IoT platform has these layers. So the layers are, the first layer are the devices themselves, and these are smart devices which can communicate via the GSM, GPS, LoRa, Sigfox, and multiple connectivity. And then they connect back and they send the signal and information to a cloud-based software platform called the IoT platform. And within the IoT platform, you have multiple technology pieces. So there's largely a data processing engine. There is a device management engine. There is a backend service. There is an API management. So the core functionality which is happening at the device management and the platform layer is the control of these devices remotely. So if you on the platform level, we can switch on, switch off, we can upgrade the firmware and control and manage some of these devices. We also have data processing. So some of these devices produce a lot of data. So if you have street lighting, parking, waste management running in multiple countries, we have a lot of this streaming data coming in. So how do you collect the data and how do you make sense of it, right? So how do you create reports? How do you look at dashboards in terms of being able to understand, okay, if my smart bin or my bin is full, or the waste has to be picked up, or if the parking spot is full or is it empty. So that kind of final visualization and report has to be generated from all of these, devices which are sending data to the platform. And on top of it, eventually, we have the application layer. So we build multiple applications like building and energy, fleet tracking, healthcare monitoring, or air quality applications, which collect and manage the data coming from these devices. We also have edge platforms. So, what we've seen is that there are a lot of scenarios where there is no connectivity. So you might not have, say, GSM, SIM, LoRa, or other kinds of connectivity available. So we have to deploy these platforms on the field, and they collect data from these smart sensors and devices, only in a localized connectivity by using different technologies like LoRa, Sigfox, or PC. So these are platforms which run on edge boxes. These can run on remote locations which do not have any kind of connectivity. So typically an IoT platform has features like multi-tenancy. So a single platform can run multiple customers, multiple applications. It can support multiple platforms. So you have a lot of different kinds of protocols, like from Samsung, or closed protocols. You have device management analytics from different kinds of customers. So the ability to manage multi-connectivity, multi-protocol devices is there. You have big data-based engines. You have AI engine to be able to make sense of the data which is coming out, and you have rapid application integration and security features. A multi-tenant, as I said before, is about running multiple customers, on the same cloud platform. I will probably skip because some of this is very technical, but you have support to multiple protocols, at the platform layer. A platform can help you connect to so many different kinds of devices which run on protocols like REST, MQTT, FOAP, and it can also run on new connectivity technologies like NB-IoT, LoRa, and Sigfox. And essentially OEMs, manufacturers, if you're manufacturing a smart device, you can manage all of your devices together. So we've done a lot of work in the IoT space, and we see that smart devices continue to grow, and there is a smart device in every home, in every enterprise. And just because you're able to connect and bring data, there's a lot of value you can bring with the data itself. And eventually, the AI element, can be driven with this. So we call the new trend is the AI-driven IoT. If I'm able to bring data from a lot of streaming devices, I can then predict outcomes. Solutions like predictive maintenance can tell you if your machine can fail in the next, say, 2 months or 3 months, or there can be a downtime in a factory due to a maintenance fault. If your AI-based models, which are being trained by the data which is coming from IoT, can then understand and predict the outcomes or the scenarios in different industrial, city, or or business environments. So that's it. And I just wanted to leave the thought about the value of IoT, how it's growing, and how IoT platforms can add value in into this business environment.
Thank you, Adesh. Again, another very interesting presentation. I know we have two more, but I just want to comment that, I'm trying to take notes during each of the presentations. And so yours, a lot of it obviously is about smart technology and how to maximize use of smart technology and using the data so that it helps businesses, decision makers, predict how they can better their business in the future. And I think overall, it just makes the operations of any business much more efficient. So thank you. And we're going to move on to the next speaker, which is, thank you, Adesh, Professor Eric Stam. And Eric, I just want to let you know, we have to finish at 10, so about 10 minutes or so, and then maybe a minute or so. And then I want to have maybe 1 or 2 minutes left at the end to open it up to everyone who's in the audience. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Let's wait and see. There it is. So welcome in Utrecht, not in Kuwait, even though I guess most of you are sitting in the Kuwait environment. I'm Erik Stam. I'm a scholar that is mainly involved in the science, but also in the practice of entrepreneurial ecosystem development globally, mainly in Europe, but also more and more so in the MENA region, in Africa, Latin America, Asia. And I'd like to share you the perspective of how to set up an entrepreneurial ecosystem strategy in your city, region, or country. Of course, the question is, first of all, why are we talking about this? Well, without entrepreneurship, without scale-ups, without unicorns, we would not even be able to do this kind of session with Zoom, with Skype, with Microsoft software, but you might also, if you use a cell phone in South Africa, you might use Cell. If you want to have one manufactured, you are going to manufacture by Xiaomi. If you're going to fly around on a personal basis, you might like Vista Global at Dubai. If you want to pay online, you use Adyen. So there are so many entrepreneurial endeavors that have not only changed the economy, but also your daily life. And the question is this really a sort of a national? So this is the density per country. So you can see there's quite a huge variation around the globe already in this extreme successful type of entrepreneurship. You can also look within countries. So this is Europe. So you can see that it's not the whole of Sweden, but especially a concentration in Stockholm. Same counts for Amsterdam in the Netherlands, or London in the UK, or Paris in France. You can also look at it from a more sort of democratic point of view, not just looking at unicorns. So young firms that have a valuation of at least $1 billion, but look at innovative startups in general. Then the picture is a bit more spread, but still concentrated in particular regions. So the message I want to convey to you is that, yes, these firms are set up by individuals, but spatial conditions matter a lot. And this has been recognized by, I would say, almost all self-respecting cities, regions, or countries. They want to be like Silicon Valley, which I think in itself is not such a creative or wise thing to do. Please build on your own strength and try to tackle your own weaknesses, like in Berlin, and Stockholm, or Amsterdam, or closer to your home ecosystem, Arabia or Dubai wants to be the best startup ecosystem. Startup Morocco have just returned from Casablanca. They all want to come to grips to stimulating entrepreneurship, but how can you do this? They all talk about ecosystems, which they all seem to like, both venture capitalists, but also practitioners in the government, entrepreneurs themselves. But of course, this metaphor, even though it might be powerful, is not useful if you really want to improve ecosystems itself. For that, you need to have a proper definition of what we are talking about. well, together with colleagues around the world, we've been pushing this research and also analytical agenda. We come to a definition as entrepreneurial ecosystems, a set of interdependent. So that is very much in line with the metaphor, so to say. But it's actors and factors governed in such a way. So governance is, of course, much more important in entrepreneurial ecosystems than in natural ecosystems. That they enable productive entrepreneurship. So not all entrepreneurship is productive. So really focusing on that type of entrepreneurship that also brings positive effects to the aggregate economy within a particular territory. So this is often taking place in a particular city, region, or country. And we've tried to summarize all the research evidence base that is available on this, and then you get to a model which includes about 10 elements which need to be in place in order to have entrepreneurship flourish. So it's not a guarantee that the productive entrepreneurship will emerge in your city, region, or country when you have fulfilled all these elements. But without these elements, it's extremely hard. So without formal institutions, a rule of law, a functioning government, without a culture that appreciates entrepreneurship, without a population that is networked so that can find each other quickly, that can enable the flow of knowledge, finance, other information, without a proper functioning physical infrastructure, without sufficient demand, without intermediaries, like, for example, the incubators, accelerators, studios that were just mentioned, without access to talent, without investments in knowledge, without leadership in and for the ecosystem, without the supply or access to finance, it is very hard to reach high levels of productive entrepreneurship and also to scale up a startup. And once you are, as a region, enabling this, that might also have positive effects. So you ultimately you'd like to create virtuous cycles or a self-propelling entrepreneurial ecosystem that is self-reinforcing, with entrepreneurs becoming mentors or venture capitalists in the next phase of their life. The good thing is we're living in the age of big data, so we can measure all this, I think now much better than 20 or 30 years ago. We gathered 10,000 of data points for the 274 European regions to measure all these elements and to show, well, to what extent are they present in each and every region, and what does that mean for the prevalence of entrepreneurship. So, for example, physical infrastructure, we've measured this with the transportation infrastructure, the accessibility by road, railway, number of passenger flights, but also the digital infrastructure, which is increasingly becoming important. For example, capital, we've looked at bank loans and venture capital. So you can measure this is the good thing. It's not perfect. I always say it's not rocket science, because then we could, with, let's say, an exact precision, predict what would happen. That's not the case with entrepreneurship, but we can give better insight into what are the conditions and how well does a region perform with respect to the conditions that enable entrepreneurship. Well, this is what the, for example, the European map would look like, that the darker the region is, the higher the quality of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. You can see there's huge variety, and it largely follows also the prevalence of entrepreneurship. Here it's the top regions are the Copenhagen, Hoofdstad.
Excuse me, Eric. I don't think, and I was wondering about this myself. Your slides are not advancing.
Oh, that is strange, because I'm at slide 15 already.
Okay, so I mean, I'm listening to you intently, and for some reason, and someone else just put that now it is. It's okay, but I mean, I could see them along the side there, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And you have a couple more minutes, and then we'll allow maybe a minute or so for Q&A.
But are you seeing my slides now, or still not?
Yes, now I do. I see slide 12.
But if I do it in full screen mode, there's no dynamic? Or there is?
No, that's fine. But for some reason, they weren't advancing earlier.
Oh, strange. Anyway,
I thought, go ahead.
I continue. So what is the predictive value of this, you might wonder? Well, it is not rocket science, as I said, but there's a strong positive correlation. The higher the entrepreneurial ecosystem quality gets, the higher the prevalence of innovative startups. So this is a bit of rocket science in the sense that it really predicts the prevalence, but not exactly. But for today, I think especially, so what does this mean for not only for thought, for analysis, but also for action? Well, you can use this data, these 10,000 data points, also in your region. So Dubai, Morocco, of course, you need to invest in this. And this is also an exercise that I think brings together public and private parties. And then you can measure the relative strengths and weaknesses of your ecosystem. So is talent really the weakest element in your ecosystem, or finance? Is physical infrastructure really that good, or demand? And this is really the starting point of a more informed dialogue amongst the stakeholders in the entrepreneurial ecosystem of how can we develop this ecosystem in a very tailor-made, context-specific way. So this is a way to start a discussion, to have a dialogue, and then prioritize on what to do to improve the ecosystem. And it can also be used afterwards for evaluation and monitoring to see whether the envisioned changes have really been realized, and if not, what is the reason for not achieving this improvement. So you can really start a collective learning process to improve your economy with initial diagnostics, dialogue, policy objectives, then choosing an instrument, implement this, and evaluate. And this can be done by governments, but also by philanthropies or by other leadership organizations in your city, region, or economy. There's more reading about this. If you don't have enough with 10 minutes, you can even do an online mini course, which we provide these days. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor back to the chair of the session. Thank you.
Eric, thank you so much, and I apologize for not saying anything sooner. I was a little perplexed, candidly. I didn't think your introduction would be that long, but I'm sure everyone in the session was listening intently, and we could see the slides along the side. So I think that your presentation ties in very nicely to Audesh's, because you were talking also about ecosystems, and it's all about efficiency and maximizing and cost savings. So, and obviously, focusing on entrepreneurship. So thank you. And I'm going to move on now to Dr. Maddie Muhos.
Excuse me, the last presenter is not here. He have emergency case. He left the conference.
Okay. All right.
Okay. We can open the open discussion. Eric, how are you?
Very good to see you.
Jennifer, feel free to open the discussion between the speaker, Catherine from Sweden, Eric from Amsterdam, Jennifer from United States, and I think Awadesh from India, Qatar, India, right? Then any comparison between the ecosystem, innovation ecosystem in different countries from the world? What is your opinion?
Yes,
I guess, go ahead, Eric. Let's just open it up for some discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should get rid of comparing each and every city and region to Silicon Valley, and really understand what are the current strengths and weaknesses of your own region and how to improve this. So this is what we are pushing further, and that I'd also like to collaborate with you on. So how can you make sense of the specific weaknesses and strength of your ecosystem? And I think I would also like to know from Awadesh, so how does this work in India? If you set up a venture studio in a particular city or region, how do you then perceive the strengths and weaknesses, and how do you collaborate with others to not only improve your venture studio, but also the whole ecosystem, so also the other venture capital, the education, etc. So that's my question back to Awadesh.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, so as you said,
Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, no, I think that the question is so interesting, and that it's not so on the over layer. It's more like, I think you need to go into the DNA of the different countries. And if we would take small countries such as Singapore, that has, huge, they have a diverse background from different cultures and everything. But still, there are things like, how is the family structure? How do you respect the elderly contra vice versa? Or how much pressure is it for competition? I think there are loads of different layers within these fields that can both help and move forward, but the ecosystem will be influenced by so many more things than what you see And it will also carry out, if you show the different products that or ways of treatments. If you take home care, for instance, such as within medtech, how is the family situation and how do you help your elderly, or do you? Yeah, I think I could talk 1 hour about that one. I leave it back, but I think it's DNA from different countries, and that it's so much more depth to the question. And I love the question was basically the comment.
Thank you, Katerina. Audesh, did you want to respond to Eric's question as well?
Yes. Yeah. So just to add to what Katerina said and what Eric said earlier, every ecosystem is different, and obviously it has its own dynamics. So I live in Qatar, and we have a very strong bridge with India. And these two countries in itself are so different in terms of the ecosystem and the entrepreneurial dynamics itself. So Qatar as a country is very similar to Singapore. It's a very small population. 70% of the population is expat. So a lot of expats essentially relocate to the country just looking for jobs, and they don't intend to be entrepreneurs. And then the local population is just about 300,000. So, the demographic itself makes it so difficult for to build a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem. But then apart from that, you have all the other drivers. You have a lot of capital available. The government is investing in multiple very high-end startup programs, startup incubators. You have a lot of angels, with a lot of high net worth. So there's a lot of money available, but the deal flow and the quality of startups is very weak, right? So, and that's why, we set up the studio in the country, because we saw that the local startup quality, as well as, the kind of quality of startups which are coming out in a small country like this, and the ability to build products in-house in Qatar, given the lack of technology skills, was not available. But if you look at India in itself, it's a much bigger country. And then if you just look at, say, one idea in metaverse, you go to a metaverse event, you'll see thousands of startups, and thousands of similar startups. So it's a problem of plenty. And, and then the ecosystem is different. So you have thriving markets, you have IPOs, you have big funds, multi-billion-dollar funds, you can give you follow-on money, and the ecosystem is much more mature. Right. So the competitive aspect is very different, So if there is a good startups, the investors are falling on each other to be able to invest in the startups as we speak, right? So both these ecosystems in comparison need different approaches. They need different kind of growth and investment, and they can produce different kinds of impact. In Qatar, for example, you have big energy companies. So if you're building something for oil and gas, if you're building something which requires a lot of cheap energy, if you're building something which can be very helpful with good logistics support, because they have an amazing airline, they have very strong logistics. So I think as entrepreneurs and as ecosystem builders, we have to fine tune and build our business model depending on where we are and what are the strengths of the ecosystem itself. So those are my few points. Yes.
Thank you, Audesh. Eric, would you care to respond?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that you bring migration to the table, because the United Arab Emirates also have a huge inflow of migration and seem to do a pretty good job in developing their entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I would even argue otherwise, that without migration, it would be hard to have a flourishing ecosystem. Of course, the question is, well, what kind of migration and what's the optimal flow, etc. But my question back, Audesh, to you would be, so what's the role of these venture studios in catalyzing local and regional ecosystems? So we, for example, in Europe, I know a few of these venture studies that really take it as their role to also not only build ventures, but also co-develop the ecosystem. So do you see something like that in Qatar as well, or is it much more an individual role focused on the incubatee, so to say?
Yeah, so let me give you an example. Like, for example, we have one startup where we source the IP for the startup from a university in the US. Okay, that particular IP has a very strong relevance in the oil and gas sector in Middle East. So once we sourced the IP, and we had the rights, we then identified a team which could essentially has the right oil and gas experience, technology, sales, and then we bought them to take over the IP, build a team. We invested in this startup, and then now they have a couple of very strong oil and gas customers. So so the spin happened because we could see that there is a burning business problem here in the Middle East and in Qatar, but no technology supply in that particular domain, right? And then, but just by building a bridge in a more mature ecosystem where there was IP, but no business opportunity, but then and then finding people and matchmaking them with the right IP and idea, we were able to build a successful team. If we had to scout for a team locally, who's got the IP, has the technical skill, as well as has the team, then probably getting that team together would be next to impossible, right? And this was only possible because we were doing it in a studio model, rather than just searching for startups, who could build something like this, right? So I think in a lot of definitive deep tech, AI, in technology areas where the technology product development life cycle is very difficult, and Middle East definitely, or ecosystems who do not have enough technology skills, cannot possibly build it quickly, the impact is higher. Wherever the product development is, difficult, it makes it much easier to come to a studio and then to launch. Right, so I think these are the variants which I see on how you could build a bridge, how you could smartly build something rather than source those startups or scout for them. And even as an investor, today the big problem for venture capitalists is that if you see a good startup, the startups themselves, every other investor wants to invest. So scouting and getting the right find itself is difficult. Sometimes it's easier when an investor is more convinced that this is something which will work, and then he finds the right team to do it. I hope I'm able to maybe answer your question.
Thank you, Audesh. Again, Audesh, Eric, and Katerina, thank you for your very interesting presentations. There was a lot, I think some of the takeaways from this are, talking about the different ecosystems and the fact that really one size does not fit all, that you have to really understand the country, the culture, maybe go to individuals who have the talent within each of those respective countries. I think one of the things that Katerina talked about, understanding the DNA, obviously that's crucial. And then Audesh just talked about the realities of different technology skills. And in my mind, when I was listening, the different technology capabilities. That's why the Silicon Valley model obviously would not work across the board. So again, thank you. And I believe our session is now done. We're on time. It's 10 o'clock here. So great interacting with everyone. And Hanadi, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for your chairing the session. Thank for all the speakers. Looking forward to seeing you also tomorrow.